what's the before snapshot and the after snapshot in terms of working together?
Yeah, it's interesting because what drove me to do this work was a very chronic sense of tension in this body.
Hmm.
And I had all these symptoms that for years I thought they were food related, or I had all sorts of stories around them, and nothing seemed to work. So when I heard about the kind of work you did, I wanted to engage, and that was what was driving me to start looking at doing this work.
Got it. Yeah, so you'd heard from other people about shifts
Yep,
that they had experienced.
yep. Actually, I read about realization process. I had heard your name from other folks, and to be honest with you, I was in a pretty desperate place when I reached out to you. I remember being very, very overwhelmed.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. And and that's, I guess it's not uncommon. It's not an uncommon thing. Yeah, in terms of my line of work. I'm curious so there was it like a somatic tension or like an energy block, something like that that you initially wanted to resolve?
It's I think it was somatic tension. I remember having a lot of experiences with energy flows through my body that would manifest as burning on my skin or burning inside of my system. In fact, come to think of it, I remember I took one of your little mini courses that you offered. I think it was a trauma resolution course.
That's right. Hmm.
Yeah. And we had a short little one-on-one session, and I noticed being able to get underneath these energy flows and release them or free them. And then you offered a walkthrough of a meditation that involved going into the different areas of the energy system, the chakras, if I remember right. And I also could feel using your work, but I could kind of get underneath what was tense in these areas and start to release them. So those were the experiences that led me to actually, now that I think about it, to really reach out and engage.
Right. Yeah, it was the trauma class was back in April of 2022,
Right.
and our sessions started, our one-on-one sessions started in August.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, uh, can I talk about what I have in my notes here?
Of course.
Where you came to initially? You said, yeah, you wanted to resolve tension in your neck and a sense of, fear and shame, and to be more, to feel like you could really be present for your body all the way down to your feet.
Right.
Does that sound
That's,
accurate? Yeah.
yeah, it does sound accurate. Mhm.
Okay. What about working together was unique in terms of what you were able to, what experiences you found in this work that were transformative?
I think there's a number of things. One thing that I'll mention right off the bat is you have an incredible sense of presence and compassion that you can sit with me as I'm experiencing, going back into these experiences in this form, and it feels very, very safe and held. So that's like the ground level right there. The second piece is I feel like you have a good intuition about meeting people where they are, and I have a pretty strong capacity to kind of go inside myself and dive into what's happening, and sort of the interplay between your intuition and my desire to go internally and investigate. It just seemed like it was a very natural, helpful, effective way of working.
You absolutely do have, a really fluid ability to go inward. And that's, any client that has that developed is going to have an easier time with this. Just being in touch with our own feelings, and feeling memories, underlying beliefs, being able to get in touch with that stuff rather fluidly is going to make anybody's work easier. And often I think what you're talking about is intuition and meeting people where they're at. I wonder if part of that is like, there's like the energetic level of a symptom or of a blockage.
Mhm.
And the energetic level and the emotional level are kind of tied in, because a lot of times energy blocks are held emotions or they're suppressed responses.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like the mental level that's holding that from the inside, because a lot of times these blocks feel like they're kind of put upon us, or that they're coming from some external force even.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can feel that way.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just speak to that.
Sort of, yeah, speak to the idea that it could feel as if there's an external force and this thing is happening to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so it feels like, so it's like, so as I see it, there's the conscious mind is like, oh, I have this energy block.
Mm-hmm.
But the unconscious mind is like, yes, well, we want to keep that energy contained, because if we don't, then something bad's going to happen.
Right.
So like, to the unconscious mind, the energy block is not a problem. It's a solution to a problem.
Yes. Yes.
But once we get at the real problem, then, it integrates with our adult conscious awareness, and we can resolve it at a more profound level than if we were to just do, if we were to just work with the energy block on the energetic level.
Yes, and that has been absolutely huge. In fact, one of the recent realizations I've had that speaks to this is I've been, these constellation of symptoms I've been wrestling with, that I've been unwinding in our work. In fact, were a window through which, if I needed to look, instead of feeling as if it's being put upon me and I needed to release it and I needed to let it go, I needed to make it go away. That has been my approach for years, and it's really never worked. And instead, in our work, I've been able to go look through the window, as uncomfortable it is, and appreciate the symptom as sort of a silent finger pointing at where I need to go. And once I go inside, I found that there was an entire like almost like a little lifetime encapsulated and pressurized into this little bubble. This part of me was walled off, and it needed to express something. It needed to have some sort of resolution, and it was missing some quality, whether it was like the quality of power, for example, or quality of a voice. And it was pressurizing inside of me to the point where the symptom was being produced. And if I'd looked at it as simply an energetic problem, I just need someone to unblock my meridians or whatever it is, then I don't think I would have ever found resolution to this. Whereas going inside, finding that pressurized piece of consciousness that almost feels like, inside of which is a mental construct and a story and a experience that's frozen in time, and engaging with it in that level has been helped me shift things I thought were almost unshiftable.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Yeah, I've never heard it put that way. Yeah, is it like a pressurized piece of consciousness?
Yeah.
That's yeah, it contains like our whole, how did you put it? Like an encapsulated
Yeah, like
pressurized
a
consciousness.
bubble of consciousness. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've never, that's beautifully said. Yeah, and look, and that's been my experience too, as somebody who's been, because I love energy work. I think nothing bad to say about energy work. And with I guess you could say holding patterns or energy blocks that are more chronic, there is that pressurized consciousness level that is the root level of the energy block. When the block is chronic, then that level is there that has to be resolved.
Yes. Yeah, that's never been clearer for me. And I can see now that my body has been showing me, essentially recapitulating an experience again and again and again, asking that I dive into the symptom and say, okay, what is it that I need to bring to consciousness? What is it I need to love?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, to dovetail off what you're saying, like, these encapsulated, or how did you put it, pressurized pieces of consciousness held in the held in the mind body energy system. Yeah, those are pieces, you could say fragments, aspects of our being that are kind of split off from conscious awareness, that we do need to integrate into love ultimately. Absolutely. Yeah, to accept, fully embrace,
And to your point, and then because it is walled off and pressurized, it feels as if it is outside of us and it is happening to us. And in some very real way it is. It's just this sort of contained microcosm that is expressing symptoms on the surface of it that we're experiencing as something outside of us, whereas actually what's going on is it's inside of us.
Exactly, exactly. And and I think that this kind of turns some of the standard thinking in perhaps both energy work and in what I what I affectionately call non-duality land,
Mhm.
some of that thinking on its head. Because if we have a tendency where we're always trying to release, or get rid of, well, that kind of attitude in a way is what's holding the blockage in a divided state, or holding ourselves in a divided state. So what we really need to release is that attitude.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. I think back on, I spent years, as you know, I spent years doing engaging in psychedelics.
Mhm.
And many of the times that I engaged with that medicine, my desire was to release, to let go, to get rid of. And this had a positive impact in many ways. And yet, the very act of pushing something away or attempting to push it away was holding it in place.
Yep. And I've seen similar situations that are exactly what you're describing.
Yes.
Yeah. And we can also have very profound insight experiences through psychedelics, or restful, healing experiences, clearing experiences. And if there's still that kind of pushing away subtly, then the symptom will still maintain, or it'll still reemerge. Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. Um, how, if at all, well, I guess, what, if any, baseline shifts have you noticed throughout our work together? And we've done about, what has it been? Maybe like, since that trauma class. I mean, the trauma class was like 2 one-on-one sessions plus
Mhm.
2 half-hour one-on-one sessions plus, the program itself, which was like 7.5 hours total. And
Right.
then, a 6 session package plus,
Yeah.
a few half hours here and there.
Right. Right. Yeah. So what I've really noticed is I have an ease in my body that I have not felt. Um, I can't even remember the last time I felt this kind of physical ease in my body. And I'm noticing that these compulsions that I've lived with for a very long time are going away. Some of them physical compulsions, wanting to tense my body in a particular way, which I now understand the story that was being told inside of my consciousness by that movement. But other things like sort of an obsessiveness around the world is going to fall apart. That used to color my world like a bottle full of dye would color a water fountain. It was just with me all the time. And our work, what I'm noticing is the water's clearer. The water I swim in is no longer colored by this tinge of panic around, oh, it's all going to end, or the world's all going to end, or I need to protect, fill in the blank, my children, myself, my whatever, from this imminent doom. All of that has let up. It's
Hmm.
quite remarkable.
That's, yeah, beautiful. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not too personal, what do you feel happened in session that led to that shift for you?
Well, what happened was we went in and I found one of those parts of me.
Yeah.
For example, one of the parts I found was a woman. In my belief system, this would have been possibly some sort of a past life experience, or maybe it's some sort of genetic memory in this body, um, whose children were starving, and there was nothing she could do. And I was able to kind of go into that ancestral genetic um, past life, what have you, memory, and allow her to feel her grief, feel the absolute panic over experiencing that. And that in that internal part of my psyche, when it was compressed and being held in place, was manifesting as me compulsively preserving food, or always thinking about how do I grow a garden, or how do I protect the family from sort of everything falling apart. All that went away, and it happened during our time together when you facilitated me going into the sensations and the thoughts and the emotions and the images. And basically breaking into that bubble and having that kind of sitting with her essentially, and allowing her to fully express the horror of it. That happened during our session, one of our sessions. Every session's been powerful.
Yeah. Yep. Right. I remember that. And I think, in situations like that, I mean, there can be other situations, one that I know of where it's like a person experiences some sort of devastating loss, and it's so difficult for them to, integrate that experience, that then the rest there, and it's like there's like a barrier over their heart going forward, and they relate to their relationships not predominantly. And I'm not saying that this is you, I'm just saying in general, but they they might relate to their relationships predominantly from a space of fear versus joy or engagement, because there's that fear of loss just predominates. And it's almost like if they I think that part of that, so like I always try to ask, like, well, what is it that's holding it, what's holding everything together? And for you, was it something like, if I experience the grief and the loss of this experience, I will just come apart? Like, was that part of it?
Yeah, what I've since figured out is I have been holding a tremendous amount of what feels like despair
Yeah.
in my heart and in my chest. And allowing myself to even touch that felt as if it would be an annihilating experience.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's what one of my mentors calls the lid problem. If we take the lid off of something, then we'll just
Will
come
it ever
apart.
stop? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, it can be really, it can be really significant and transformative to be able to like rest into the ground of our being and then experience that grief, so that we're fully held through that experience, and that we know that we've got that unshakable foundation.
Yes. Yes. And then you bring up a really interesting, really helpful point, is being able to rest in the ground of our being able to just tie into that the smallest amount. It's like this beautiful tether that through which that energy can almost emerge into those wounded places inside of us and start to bring healing into them as well. So there's not only is there an emotional or an intellectual or visual engagement with, I'll call it the pressurized consciousness, but there's also the building of this beautiful safety line or tether to the ground of our being, from which can that sense of fundamental safety and okayness can almost start to infuse that pressurized consciousness. So it's like you're hitting it from a bunch of different directions with this work.
That's it. Yeah, that's, I guess that's, yeah, you described, I guess, what my actual intent is with this work. Yes, it's certainly the ground of, helping people rest into the ground of their being and that sense of fundamental safety. For example, if for holding patterns of like low self-worth, the question might be something like, if in such and such situation you didn't actually go into feeling, like you were unworthy or feeling shame, how would that feel? And a lot of times it's like, well, oh yeah, that feel great, right? That's usually the first answer that comes. Oh yeah, I feel like a relief.
Right.
Okay. And is there any part of you that feels like you'd be somewhat uncomfortable with that? Right. And so that's a question that experientially it gets to the unconscious part of the mind that's holding the other side of it. Because a lot of
Right.
times if I feel confident, then I'm going to compete with mom, or
Well, you're bringing
yeah.
to mind another piece of work we did, which was
Sure.
incredibly powerful. It's as you'll probably recall, I had some experiences where I had, when I was young, I was given a particular medicine, and very young, and it caused me to hallucinate all night. And during that time, my parents weren't with me at all. I was just left alone to experience that.
Yeah.
And in our work, the most amazing transformation happened because I was able to see how that experience turned into this compulsion in me to never give up on somebody when they were having a major psychotic break. Well, then it happens, right, that I end up with this partner, this boyfriend, who really would have these kind of breaks, and he would become quite abusive. And I had this pattern where I would take the abuse and I would keep leaning back in because I would not abandon. I would not abandon. There was this compulsion to not abandon. And when I realized that the compulsion came from, first of all, having been abandoned and making the internal determination that I would never be someone that did that, it took on this very unhealthy pattern in my life. And when we brought that to consciousness in our work together, holy moly, that whole thing just completely released. That compulsion to go back to that abusive relationship went away, never to return. And it was incredibly powerful work. And, every one of our sessions, Michael, I mean, I could, if I were to read through our notes, I could be like, okay, now let's talk about this other piece and how, having that dialogue or having that inner grounding transformed this other piece. And then after that session, from there on out, the compulsion was gone, the pain was gone, the tension was gone, what have you. It's just really, really powerful work.
Yeah, awesome. No, yeah, I'm so glad to hear that's been your experience.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, yeah, right. And I remember you saying about one of your ex-partners that it was like you realized that you were unconsciously trying to heal yourself through him.
Yes.
Yeah. And once that aha moment kicked in, that was like a big part of being able to just, reorient.
Right. Right. And also, giving that responsibility back to him because that's his responsibility, you know?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, right. And yeah, yeah, yeah. And you said that it hasn't returned since, meaning like in your relationship, like is there any draw towards people like that now? Or people,
No,
when I say
there's
people like
not.
that, people who are, I guess, wounded, don't take care of themselves. Yeah, everybody has wounding, but who aren't
Sure.
taking responsibility for themselves and
Right.
who mirror your early childhood wounds.
Right. Well, first of all, there's no attraction to that kind of person in my life anymore. And then also, all of the relationships that were not quite that toxic with that particular toxin, but still carried a tinge of it. I don't engage with them in that way anymore. And my relationship with them has become much more heartfelt and free. And there's no longer a sense of this white knuckle need to control around um, somebody else's wounding. Rather, I find myself with these folks. My son's a great example of being able to just be with him in a way that's heartfelt and centered and compassionate, and also allowing for whatever arises. That panic is gone. There's a panic that is gone from me in my system with my relationships.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
The last bit of work that we did, does that feel okay to talk about?
Sure.
Okay. Um, yeah, you had talked about an energy block that was around, your shoulder and your neck.
Mm.
And we were doing some the session started with doing some energy work on that. And then it started to unpack into that, you started to unpressurize the consciousness that was held there.
Right.
And you said, let's see. Yeah, if it had to do with like if I was perfect enough, mom would like me. That it felt like there was perfectionism held in that tension in the body.
Yeah, and since then, what it that experience of getting in touch with that sense of perfection, I took that a lot further after our session, and
Oh,
I was
mhm.
able to unwind it even more. Um, and what emerged for me was it wasn't necessarily perfection; it was really about control. And when I went into the control, I did this process where I realized, well, wait a minute. If I lay my body down on the ground in this particular way, and if I have a friend, which I did, put her hand on me in a particular way, and I lay my face into the ground in a particular way, all of this emerged. The whole story became very, very clear to me. And what I learned from that experience was my body in every way was compulsively recapitulating some sexual abuse
Oh,
that I'd
wow.
had.
Oh, wow.
And it
Hmm.
was amazing. And what emerged from that experience, I realized the piece of pressurized consciousness that came down was the little girl who was capable of having control over her body and saying no and screaming and pushing back at that experience and having the power and having the adults to come in and stop that experience. But I mean, I guess I want to talk about this, even though it'll be sensitive for some people to maybe hear about. But this body was showing me that experience again and again in so many different ways, like chronic infections on the left side of my face, where my face was pressed to the ground, burning where I was being held down, burning up here where my hair was being pulled, my legs being put in certain situations, my whole body. By taking the idea of perfection and feeling into it and realizing there was something around the aspect of control, and by allowing my body to go into the full somatic enactment of whatever that control was about, I could suddenly see that my body was showing something to me that I had sublimated for lots of reasons since I was 7 years old. And it was huge. It was a huge release for me.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
that's amazing.
it was amazing. And I used to always be very frustrated because I would say to myself, I want to see what happened to me as a child. And I would sort of have this belief, this assumption that somehow I could have this magical third eye experience and I would have like a movie and it would show me what happened to me as a child. But that never happened. And I kept insisting and insisting, show me what happened, show me what happened. Well, the interesting thing is, my body has been showing me what happened probably for 15 years. And I didn't know what I was seeing. I
Wow.
didn't know it.
Wow.
So it was my consciousness, my body was listening to my command, basically, show me what happened. I just didn't understand the language.
That's so beautifully said. Wow. Yeah. And when you like when your body was showing does that mean like when you felt heat sensations or like a somatic memory of pressure, on your
Right.
back, that sort of
Right,
thing?
right.
Yeah.
It was this constellation of symptoms of always wanting to, when I'm laying on my stomach, to put my legs in certain ways, always wanting to compulsively shove my neck in certain ways, always wanting to pull my hair because my scalp felt so itchy and painful, and always having issues with the left side of my face and my jaw. All of these things, even to the point my vision in my left eye got much worse when I was young, suddenly. So all of these things, when you look at them independently, they're just a reason to be incredibly frustrated. And you can go down chasing all sorts of doctor's appointments and, x-rays of your jaw and, massage therapy appointments. You can chase all of these individual symptoms. But when it all came together of a piece in a single story, that's when the tapestry of the vision was made whole, and I could actually see what happened. And once I had that, everything started to make sense, and I was able to go in and do some work with the little girl that experienced that abuse and help her bring the energy in of protectiveness in her voice. And it was powerful, and it started with, our work has been leading up to this for a long time, and it started with this idea of, okay, if it's perfection, what is perfection? Okay, it's control. Okay, let's go ahead and feel into the control. Does that make sense? I'm kind of out there, but this is my experience.
That makes total sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes total sense. And that's how these patterns work. They tend to be layered like that, exactly as you're talking about. Yeah.
Right.
How do you feel different since you've been coming in contact with that part of you that suffered that ordeal?
Yeah, all the burning in my shoulder seems to be gone. And
Beautiful.
yeah, and when I sleep at night, I'm noticing I'm not having that sense of what I would call sickness and burning that chronically was present in my upper body and upper back. That seems to be going away. It feels almost like I'm kind of left with the fact that there is a physicalized imprint of these experiences. There's like wounding on the physical level, like the muscles are exhausted, for example, that need to be healed. But my sleep is better. My confidence is better. That's another thing. I felt like I had a compulsive need to be witnessed. That's starting to go away because I brought the appropriate witnessing to the experience. Yeah. It's powerful work, Michael.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. When those parts of us are disowned, we do tend to want to go to other people more for witnessing or for holding or for, getting some need met. And when we end up going in and integrating and accepting and, loving those different parts, then, if there is neediness there, it gets resolved. Or if there is, neediness that shows up in our relationships. But I'm not saying that as a pejorative term.
Yeah, yeah.
But feeling like, but yeah, something like a little extra on the need to be witnessed.
Yeah, yeah, there is. A friend of mine once said to me, I guess Marion Woodman said something along the lines of, a trauma cannot come to consciousness until the chalice of the ego is strong enough to hold the information. And, this work, and in some ways, is very much about just as we strengthen our capacity to hold all experience, whatever it is that arises.
Yes.
Then more truth can emerge because we have the capacity to contain it, hold it, witness it, resolve it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100% on that. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm delighted that you've experienced these various different transformative shifts. My experience is that with the right kind of finessing, I guess you could say, it doesn't actually take much to do it. Because sometimes you would say, oh, wow, this happened in like one session, or we did this kind of work in one session. And, several, maybe if not all of our sessions were like that, from what you said before.
Yeah, you've heard me use the term magic eraser. It's like a freaking magic eraser sometimes. We just go in and something gets erased, and then suddenly everything looks different because the fundamental cause of the problem or the issue or the compulsion has been erased.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. Right. One thing that my mentor taught me was that the frame for it is that, what looks like the problem, like the energy block or low self-worth or whatever it happens to be for a person, that is actually the solution to some deeper problem. And if you get at that, then it's like you won't need to plug up leaks all the time.
Yes.
There won't, it's almost like there won't be an energy block anymore because there will be no painful experience to suppress on some subconscious level that then emerges as an energy block, or then it manifests as an energy block.
Right. Yeah. And isn't it interesting that the experience I just went through was an internal part of me that was crying to be seen because it wasn't being seen. And so then it made itself seen through pain, so it was the solution, which was see me.
Yes.
And it was demonstrating right in front of me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm really glad that, that there was continuation after the last time we met, and that you got to something deeper that was resolved. And, with your sensitivity and just depth and everything, it doesn't surprise me that you got to that. You said with a friend who was kind of holding you through the experience.
Yep. I asked her to come help me with it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So listen, again, I'm really glad that you've gotten underneath these lifelong patterns essentially. And it sounds like, the roots of several major lifelong patterns are no longer there.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely true. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, my pleasure. And thanks for doing this and sharing your experience. I think it'll help other people as well.
Wonderful. I hope so. Thank you.
Okay.